The silence in your own home feels different from any other silence, doesn't it? It's not the peaceful quiet of a Sunday morning or the comfortable stillness shared with a good friend. This is the kind of silence that makes you wonder if your words even register, if your feelings matter, or if you somehow become invisible to the very people who should see you most clearly. You know that hollow feeling when you try to share something important and you're met with a blank stare, a dismissive comment, or worse, complete indifference. Maybe you've spent decades hoping that this time will be different, that this conversation will finally break through, that they'll suddenly understand what you've been trying to say all these years. But tonight, something shifts. Tonight, you discover that the power you've been giving away all these years was never theirs to take in the first place. Here's something those who've walked this path before you have discovered. The secret to feeling truly seen doesn't start with changing them. It begins with a profound shift in how you see yourself and your situation. This might sound backwards, especially when you've been focused on getting their attention for so long, but stick with me. What you're about to learn will change everything. The invisible weight you carry isn't your imagination. That feeling of being unheard, unseen, and emotionally alone, even when surrounded by family, is real, and it has a name. Those who study human connections call it emotional loneliness, and it often begins much earlier than we realize. The first truth that sets you free is understanding what I call your hope trap. When you were young, like most children, you probably created what we might call healing fantasies. These were secret hopes buried deep in your heart that someday the people you loved would give you the emotional connection you craved. Perhaps you imagined that one magical conversation would finally make them understand you, or that if you just tried hard enough, they'd see how much their words and actions affected you. You might recognize this pattern. There you were, like a small bird hopping around its parent, constantly chirping for a crumb of attention, a sign of recognition, anything to show that your emotional world mattered to them. One person I spoke with described trying for 30 years to get her mother to acknowledge the hurt she'd caused, only to be met with the same cold denial every single time. This cycle of hoping and disappointment isn't just frustrating, it's genuinely exhausting. Each time you reach out expecting something different and receive the same indifferent response, it's like watching someone you care about walk out on you emotionally over and over again. The pain isn't petty or oversensitive. It's a completely normal response to emotional injury. But here's where everything changes. You cannot force someone to become emotionally mature. You cannot will them to change their fundamental nature. This isn't about your worthiness or whether you've tried hard enough. Their limitations have nothing to do with your value as a person. When you truly grasp this, when it sinks into your bones, something profound shifts inside you. The healing fantasies you carried, those beautiful, painful dreams of connection, they served a purpose when you were young and powerless. They gave you hope when you needed it most. But now, as someone who's lived and learned, you can see them for what they are, wishful thinking that keeps you trapped in a cycle of disappointment. Your second awakening comes from unmasking emotional immaturity. Let me share what those who've studied human behavior for decades have observed about people who struggle with emotional maturity. These individuals often fear genuine emotion, the way some people fear heights. They avoid deep closeness because it feels threatening to them. They struggle with self-reflection, rarely apologize meaningfully, and can be surprisingly inconsistent in their responses to you. Their world tends to revolve around their own feelings and what they need to feel safe and comfortable. They're not necessarily trying to be hurtful, they simply lack the emotional capacity to respond differently. It's like expecting someone who's colorblind to describe a sunset in vivid reds and oranges. They can't see what they can't see. Think of it this way. Imagine trying to have a heart-to-heart conversation with someone who has the emotional regulation skills of a toddler. When they feel overwhelmed or challenged, Everyone around them feels the ripple effect of their distress. One woman described her relationship with her emotionally immature mother as feeling like she was constantly dealing with someone superficial who only wanted her to do things for her, never to truly connect. These people live in what I call emotional survival mode. They're so focused on managing their own internal world that they have little capacity left for truly seeing or understanding yours. They might ask how you're doing, but they're not really prepared to hear the answer if it's anything more complex than fine. Watch how they respond when you share something meaningful with them. Notice how quickly they change the subject, minimize your feelings, or somehow make it about themselves. This isn't conscious cruelty, it's emotional limitation. They're like someone with a broken radio trying to tune into your frequency. The equipment just isn't working properly. Understanding this pattern is incredibly freeing because it helps you realize their behavior is about them, not a reflection of your lovability or the effort you put in. This insight can release you from years of self-blame and confusion about their inconsistent actions. You stop asking yourself what's wrong with you and start seeing what's limited about them. The key is learning their tells, those predictable patterns that repeat themselves. Maybe they always deflect with humor when things get serious. Perhaps they bring up past grievances to avoid dealing with present issues. Or they might use silence as a weapon, withdrawing their presence whenever you need connection most. Once you see these patterns clearly, their behavior loses its power to confuse and devastate you. You begin to see the frightened, limited person behind the difficult behavior. This doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps you understand that their inability to connect has nothing to do with your worthiness of love. Your third transformation involves becoming a quiet observer rather than an emotional reactor. This doesn't mean becoming cold or shutting down your heart. Instead, it's about staying grounded in your own mind and feelings while their emotional storms swirl around you. Picture yourself as someone conducting a gentle study of human behavior. You're watching, noting patterns, staying curious about what you observe, but not getting swept away by the drama. When someone described his family interactions as feeling like he was floating alone in the ocean with no one around him, learning this detached observation became his pathway back to solid ground. This practice gives you back something precious, your emotional power. Their behavior no longer has the ability to devastate you because you're choosing how to respond. You step out of what those who understand family dynamics call emotional enmeshment, where your identity gets so tangled up with theirs that their moods determine your peace of mind. During difficult interactions, try silently narrating what's happening to yourself. They're getting defensive now. I can feel my chest tightening. They're changing the subject to avoid the real issue. This internal commentary keeps you connected to your own experience rather than getting lost in theirs. The observer in you notices without judgment. You watch them deflect, deny, or dismiss, and instead of taking it personally, you think, there they go again, using their familiar strategy to avoid emotional connection. It's like watching a play you've seen many times before. You know all the lines, all the plot twists, but you're no longer surprised or devastated by the performance. When you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, quietly repeat to yourself, detach, detach, detach. Sometimes you might need to take a brief break, even if it's just excusing yourself for a moment to collect your thoughts. This isn't running away, it's choosing to stay present to yourself. This observer stance doesn't make you heartless. If anything, it protects your heart, so it can stay open to the people and experiences that truly nourish you. You're not becoming indifferent, you're becoming wise. Here's where your fourth awakening begins to change everything, learning to aim for relatedness instead of relationship. With emotionally limited people, it's time to stop reaching for a deep, emotionally satisfying relationship where you feel truly seen and understood. Instead, aim for what we might call simple relatedness, communication that's tolerable and focused on practical outcomes, without expecting emotional intimacy or validation. Think of it like this. If someone has an intense fear of snakes, you wouldn't keep bringing up snakes hoping they'll eventually warm up to the topic. With emotional matters, some people have the same kind of phobic response. Your goal becomes achieving specific practical outcomes rather than hoping for a change of heart. This might feel like settling for less at first, but it's actually choosing something far more valuable, your own peace and emotional well-being. You protect your energy by accepting the limits of what they can give while staying true to yourself. When you need to communicate something important, focus on the outcome rather than the relationship. For example, instead of thinking, I need to make them understand how their words hurt me, try, I will calmly state my position, and then let it go. You manage the interaction by redirecting conversations that go nowhere or setting gentle time limits on difficult discussions. You might say something like, I can see we're not going to agree on this, so let's talk about something else. Or, I've said what I needed to say. Let's leave it there. This isn't giving up, it's choosing your battles wisely and protecting your emotional energy for the people and situations where it can make a real difference. The beautiful thing about relatedness is that it's honest. You're no longer pretending the relationship is something it isn't. You're dealing with reality, not fantasy. And in that honesty, you find a strange kind of peace. If this message is speaking to your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Comment "I see me" below to let us know you're ready to reclaim your voice and your peace. And please subscribe so you won't miss future conversations about living with wisdom and genuine self-respect. The fifth and most beautiful discovery is finding your true self again. For perhaps years, you've been playing what we might call a role self, presenting a version of yourself that you thought others wanted or needed. This performance is exhausting because it requires you to constantly monitor and adjust your authentic responses. Deep within you exists what many call your authentic core, the part of you that knows what you truly think, feel, need, and value. This true self wants to grow, to express itself, to make choices based on your own inner wisdom rather than someone else's approval or disapproval. One professional I know described being haunted by an inner critical voice that echoed his parents' impossible standards. He learned to pause before pushing himself toward perfection and ask, are my needs part of this picture? This simple question began to free him from a lifetime of self-neglect, disguised as virtue. Your true self has been waiting patiently for you to remember who you are, beneath all the roles you've played, all the accommodations you've made, all the ways you've dimmed your light, hoping to make others more comfortable. This authentic you has opinions, preferences, boundaries, and yes, even dislikes. You don't have to love everyone. You don't have to be endlessly understanding. You don't have to sacrifice your peace for someone else's comfort. Embracing your authentic feelings, even the ones you've been taught are unacceptable, is crucial for your well-being. This includes anger, disappointment, and yes, even not liking certain people sometimes. These feelings aren't character flaws. They're information about your boundaries and values. Your anger might be telling you that your boundaries have been crossed. Your disappointment might be highlighting values that matter deeply to you. Your dislike of certain behaviors or people might be your inner wisdom protecting you from energy drains or emotional harm. When you honor your true self, something remarkable happens. The guilt and shame you've carried for having normal human reactions begins to lift. You start treating yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a dear friend facing similar struggles. You realize your worth isn't dependent on anyone else's approval or emotional capacity. You begin to ask yourself powerful questions. What do I actually enjoy doing? What kind of energy do I want around me? What makes me feel alive and valued? Which relationships actually add something positive to my life? These questions guide you back to yourself, back to what truly matters. Start practicing small acts of self-compassion today. When you notice that familiar inner critic echoing old voices of criticism or impossible standards, gently remind yourself, that this isn't your true voice speaking. Take one small action on your own behalf, even if it's just allowing yourself to rest when you're tired or saying no to something that depletes you. You are now free to be yourself, to set boundaries that protect your emotional well-being, and yes, even to limit or temporarily suspend contact with people who consistently drain your energy or dismiss your feelings. This isn't about being harsh or unforgiving. It's about honoring the precious life you've been given. Some people will call this selfish. Let them. You've spent enough years putting everyone else's comfort before your own well-being. You've earned the right to be selfish enough to protect your peace, your energy, and your joy. Understanding emotional immaturity in others, learning to observe rather than react, aiming for relatedness instead of forcing relationship, and prioritizing your authentic self. These aren't just coping strategies. They're pathways back to yourself, back to the person you were meant to be before you learn to twist yourself into shapes that might win you love or acceptance. This journey might stir up some grief for what you didn't receive, for the connection you longed for but never found. That sadness is valid and important. Feel it, honor it, and then let it guide you toward creating the kind of life and relationships that truly nourish your soul. You might find yourself mourning the parent who never truly saw you, the partner who couldn't meet you emotionally, the family member who made everything about themselves. Grieve these losses. They're real. The relationship you wanted with them, it matters that it didn't happen. Your longing was valid. Your hurt is legitimate. But don't let that grief become a prison. Let it become compost for the beautiful life you're going to create from this point forward. Every disappointment, every moment of feeling invisible, every time you were dismissed or ignored, let it all serve the purpose of showing you exactly what you don't want to accept anymore. The beautiful truth is that you get to experience what some call a second life, one that is authentically, completely, unapologetically your own. You don't have to wait for anyone else to change, to see you clearly, or to give you permission to live fully. That power has been within you all along. Your voice matters, your feelings are valid, your peace is precious. And the journey toward feeling truly seen begins not with hoping others will finally understand you, but with the radical act of truly understanding and honoring yourself. This is your time. This is your life. This is your chance to step out of the shadows of other people's limitations and into the bright light of your own authentic existence. You've been invisible for too long. It's time to see yourself clearly, to value yourself fully, and to live in a way that honors the beautiful, complex, worthy person you've always been. What's one thing you'll try first to reclaim your emotional freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this conversation brought you value and hope, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more insights on living wisely and authentically. Your journey toward feeling genuinely seen and valued starts right now, and it starts with you choosing yourself, finally and completely.